Hi, I'm Stephen Cornish, a digital artist, animator, and mod developer. I work in Maya, ZBrush, Photoshop, After Effects, and Blockbench. I make 2D and 3D game assets, including animations, models, motion graphics, and illustrations. My latest project, Alien Evolution, is a large Minecraft mod with a high bar for quality animations and visuals. Since its launch in March, the project has reached over 80,000 downloads and developed a Discord community with over 7,000 members who are following its active development. My work on Alien Evo taught me a lot about expressive animation and conveying character through movement and design, which directly contributed to my Capstone project, a 3D animated short film made in the style of the classic Hanna-Barbera cartoons. It follows a confident chameleon and an unsuspecting isopod as they find themselves crossing paths in the rainforest. Their conflicting roles in nature lead to an intense chase on the forest floor, filled with plenty of visual humor and classic gags that draw clear inspiration from slapstick cartoons. As a part of last semester's previs class, I created a document with a huge variety of notes to help me stay organized as I worked on this project. However, nothing I made during pre-production was more valuable to me than the storyboards. I constantly referred to this sheet throughout the entire process. It defined the simple silhouettes of both characters, as well as how they were going to move and what expressions they were going to make, which was extremely important to understand when modeling and rigging the characters, as I knew exactly what I needed them to do. From the beginning, I knew I wanted all of the assets and animation on this project to be my own. This meant I was going to be learning a lot of things that were brand new to me, and facing those challenges as they came. I began modeling the chameleon first, then the isopod. Both models followed the familiar process of polymodeling that I'm quite comfortable with. During this time, I was thoroughly experimenting with different software and Arnold Toon shaders to achieve a flat, cel-shaded look with black outlines. It was not easy to learn, but eventually I became very familiar with the AI Toon shaders, and my characters were beginning to come to life. When it comes to rigging, some people love the process, and I'm definitely not one of those people. The modeling and rigging for both characters took me a little over a month, and the rigging process accounts for most of that time. Most of it was just troubleshooting, really. However, I did manage to create some fun controls with deformers for the chameleon's tail and blend shapes for both of their crazy expressions. Eager to move on, I decided to skip IK controls for both rigs and go straight into animating the first scene with only FK. For those familiar, you already knew this was a terrible mistake that I immediately regretted halfway through animating the first scene. Trying to move the chameleon's body would move all of his legs too, which had to be manually readjusted for all movement. After committing to this method for scene 1, I went back to the rigs and created IK controls for all of their limbs. The actual animation workflow following this is a pretty big blur to me, being the most time-consuming, yet ironically was still the most enjoyable part. I started each scene with a stepped block out that heavily referenced the storyboards for timing and key poses. And then I did another, more detailed pass on top of that, iterating over and over, pushing poses and adding bounce and overlap wherever I could. It was important to me that these two characters animate very differently, using different body parts and traits to communicate emotion. The isopod uses his antenna almost as eyebrows to convey emotion. He also scuttles around on his tiny legs and rolls around as a ball to get around quickly. The chameleon tends to use his tongue or tail instead of his hands and expresses himself with large brows, bulbous eyes, and a wide grin. With all 5 scenes animated, I wanted to give special attention to the rendering and post-processing part of this project. The final rendered output of my scenes with the Toon shaders appeared very sterile and too clean for the 40s feel I was going for. I spent many days nailing the art style and imperfections of these old cartoons. My final output is a combination of multiple different types of grain, camera shake, chromatic aberration, drop shadows, careful color correction, and a change to 4:3 aspect ratio. I also went back and modeled a full rainforest environment, but the backgrounds became too visually busy. From the early planning stages, I expected this, and I knew I was going to add a shallow depth of field to really sell the small scale of the characters compared to their environment. However, I failed to account for multiple factors that led to the built-in Arnold depth of field, creating an ugly output no matter what. To circumvent this, I learned how to use Maya's render layers, which allowed me to specify which objects render out in multiple different passes, even if they are being obscured by another object. Without ever planning for this, the process for compositing my scenes had somewhat poetically led to emulate that of traditional cell animation, where every frame consisted of an outline layer, ink layer, and painted background. All that was left to do was then scour the depths of the internet for every possible cartoon-related sound effect and pair them with the key movements. A massive part of what makes the Hanna-Barbera cartoons so great is their genius orchestral soundtracks, which just wasn't feasible for a project like mine. However, with the right combination of music and sound, I think my final animation succeeds at projecting that same kind of humor and impact. I'd appreciate it if you'd check out my website and my modding community, and I hope you enjoy my animation.